Welcome everyone to the You're Better of Knowing podcast. Today's episode is about identifying and building the best creatives for short-form video. And creative is actually a major driver of ad effectiveness and efficiency, but often still lacking efforts to get properly measured. And last year, Meta ran a study with Toluna, who utilized a pretty fascinating approach to measure creative elements at scale. So today, we'd like to talk a bit about that measurement approach and, of course, also the results. In this episode, I have 4 guests with me. From Toluna, who ran the study and can share details on the approach, we have media and digital measurement specialist Martin Esch, as well as Associate Research Director Bex Launstein-Dean. And from Meta, we have Sonja Wedekin, Marketing Science Partner for the DACH region. She worked on contextualizing the results from a Meta perspective. And last but not least, we have Dan Moller, Creative Strategist at Meta. He is an expert on creatives and can share further guidance on what works well for short-form video creatives. As always, can we start with brief intros about everyone? Maybe let's start with Toluna. Bex, can you go first?
Of course. Hi, I'm Bex, Associate Director at Toluna, as you mentioned. I've been working in consumer research for over a decade and specialise in campaign effectiveness and creative executions with a focus on digital media and FMCG brands. I'm also an Instagramaholic, whether I'm looking to keep up to date with my friends, source vegan recipes, or get inspiration for my next crochet project.
Brilliant. Thank you. Martin, can you go next?
Yeah, sure. Hello, I'm Martin. I'm a media and digital measurement specialist at Toluna. That means for the last 15 years or so, I've helped brands develop and optimize digital campaigns, multimedia campaigns. Like Bex, my go-to social media platform is, surprise, surprise, Instagram. There I avidly engage with the aviation community via hashtag #AvGeeks. Perhaps I shouldn't have admitted to that. Also, all the fantastic RuPaul's Drag Race content and community on Instagram is an absolute go-to for me as well.
Great. Happy to have you both. Sonja, what about you?
Yes, hello. I'm Sonja, Marketing Science Partner at Meta. I've been working at Meta for almost 8 years now. I'm helping brands to understand what's really driving their campaign performance. And I, of course, also love Insta, using it to stay connected with friends, watch silly reels, and follow some of my favorite punk rock bands.
Yay. And last but definitely not least, Dan.
Hey everyone, I'm Dan. I'm a creative strategist at Meta based in the UK. I've been at Meta for about 7 years. Like Martin, huge consumer of drag race content on Instagram. Love it. Prior to Meta as well, I was a visual effects supervisor working mostly on TV commercials from about 20 years ago. And yeah, like in my role at Meta, it's that same kind of thing. Like what role does creativity play in fueling performance? And I focus very much on supporting our biggest clients on the platform to get their maximum kind of performance impact out of the creative decisions they're making.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, let's get into the topic, creative elements that matter for short-form video. First of all, why is this relevant? Can you share a bit on why we did this research and why short-form video is so important? Sonja.
Yes, of course. So short-form video has actually become one of the most relevant formats on our platforms. Over 50% of time spent on Instagram is on Reels actually. And Reels are reshared over 4.5 billion times a day. So we clearly see that short-form video isn't just a nice to have anymore. And what's also exciting from a professional perspective, it's not just about people consuming content only, it can also trigger actions. So nearly 8 in 10 people surveyed by GWI said they've actually bought something after watching Reels. So people watch, they share, they buy, an ideal place for advertising, right? Yeah, right. While we knew that this is an ideal place for advertising, we unfortunately had at the same time very limited learnings on creative best practices for Reels. And we also knew that when it comes to advertising, creative is one of the biggest drivers for campaign success. And we thought this must be especially true for Reels because they come with their very own language. So basically, that's why we wanted to dig into the topic and understand how to do it right.
Yeah, that makes sense, and actually very impressive numbers showing the relevance of short form video overall. So I think it's very fair to assume that short form video is a very relevant format on some non-meta platforms as well. So what was the concrete goal of the research? What did we know already, and what did we still need to learn? Starting with Sonja and then handing over.
Yes. When we started with this project, we already knew that our Creative Essentials work. So Creative Essentials are 9 to 16 video with audio designed with safe zones in mind. So what are safe zones? So safe zones basically make sure your key content can be seen. It's actually the area of the creative that is guaranteed to be fully visible, independent of the aspect ratio or placement. But coming back to our learnings and the full Creative Essentials, so 9 to 16 video with audio and safe zones, ads that followed these essentials outperformed other ads. And that was whether you compared them to image ads or also to standard video. And it applied to both brand and performance campaigns.
All right. And to be clear to the audience, so 9 to 16 means the classic vertical format that you have on a smartphone. Dan, can you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So on top of, it needing to be 9:16, it needing to be in the safe zones, we see that over 80% of reels played on Instagram each day are played with the sound on, which means that sound has a really important role to play. Similarly, we know that across both brand and performance objectives, that having a human presence, having text overlays over your video content, or leaning into lo-fi content, or having a hook in the first couple of seconds, we know that these things also drive performance, which is super important to think about in terms of starting to get a little bit of insight into those creative decisions that are being made. Like, should we have a human present in there? Probably yes. And we've also seen from previous research that we've done as well that top motivators for people wanting to watch reels are to be entertained or to have fun or to reduce boredom. And so thinking about all of these things together when you're starting to develop your creative for reels placements is crucial. But that's kind of about as much as we really had in terms of these aggregate findings so far. When it gets into the real specifics, there wasn't much more than that available to us just yet.
Yeah. So these were the basics we knew, and now coming to what did we actually still need to learn from this Toluna research, Sonja?
Yeah, so we heard that creative decisions are clearly a factor for performance, and getting the foundations right pays off. The question then became, what else can advertisers do on top of that to make their creative stand out? So for that, we partnered with Toluna to go beyond these foundations and find out what creative elements can drive performance with Reels ads. The goal was simply going more granular. And ultimately, we wanted to derive first insights into key creative levels so that we could inspire advertisers' creative best practice. And of course, also inspire them to get started on their test and learn journey for Reels.
All right. Very clear. Thank you. So let's dive into what probably the marketing scientists in the audiences will be most interested in. Bex, how did you actually do it?
So for this research, we deployed our mobile creative testing tool. So that allows us to simulate an Instagram Reels feed environment to show the ads to a test audience. Each ad was shown to 100 participants. We measured viewing behavior passively. And after they had been exposed to the feed, participants were asked some questions on memory metrics, such as the brands they remember, and brand metrics, such as comprehension, likability, and purchase intent.
Right.
With the data that we had for each of those 100 ads, we also coded against 65 different creative dynamics, so such as how and when the brand and the message are shown, the presence of the product within the ad, the use of speech and music, and so on. The ads came from the CPG vertical to allow us to inform brand best practices, and from the e-commerce vertical to inform performance within direct response. We conducted this testing across Germany, the UK, Italy, and Turkey. We took a look at the statistical relationship between the coded creative variables and the ads performance, specifically those that performed in the top 20% for each metric in comparison to the average, to identify which variables relate most strongly to performance in terms of response to the ads and brand action.
Brilliant, thank you. And that's actually a pretty broad test design, right? So we had 65 variables to test across participants, across countries, across verticals. So yeah, very broad setup. And actually, I love that we tested in different countries as well, and because that's also a classic marketing science question, is actually to which degree can we actually compare the results from different countries? How did you do that?
So our ultimate findings do hold true across the 4 different markets that we tested. But for the analysis itself, we needed to look at each ad against a country-specific benchmark. If we looked at using the ads as their own benchmark, we saw some very country-specific dynamics start to creep in. For example, our audience in Turkey are just generally more positive about every ad that they see, while our audiences in Germany and the UK might be a little bit more negative. So we needed to, for the purposes of analysis, look at country-specific benchmarks to allow us to control for these nuances and create a more accurate cross-comparison.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So having country-specific benchmarks, while the tendency is the same, the level is different then. All right. I mean, and now we have that massive test setup. Just to be clear, as our regular listeners know, of course, we would also have our own incrementality solutions to test campaigns. Why did we choose the Toluna approach over lift tests?
Yes, that's a good question. I have a straightforward answer. So the creative choices for Reels are almost endless. So testing every single element with something like a lift study just isn't feasible. That's why we took this explorative approach first, where we actually really wanted to narrow down the creative elements here. And then from there, we recommend to pick what fits the brand and start your own creative test and learn journey. And then, of course, best also consider incrementality.
All right. So first of all, inspiration, learn a lot about elements, and then go into specific tests on your own. That makes sense. So yeah, let's go into the results. Dan, can you share some of the most important findings we got from this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found it really exciting when these came in because we had validation of some things we kind of had some intuition about, and then we tried to get advertisers to test, but having the actual data behind it really helped. For example, there were some differences depending if you're going for upper funnel or lower funnel. So for brand advertisers, we found that making sure you're showing both the brand and the main message early in the creative, that's within the first 5 seconds, makes it 1.7 times more likely to rank in the top 20% for purchase intent. So making sure you're really stating your case early in the Reels content. For upper funnel, we also found that dynamic branding is really important. So creatives that display the brand more than once, so not just flashing up a logo and having it go away, but having it appear in different scenes or different positions throughout the video, are 1.8 times more likely to rank in the top 20% for purchase intent. And then also thinking about, as we heard earlier, over 80% of Reels are watched with sound on. So really looking at the ways you can deliver that message through both audio and visual cues increases that likelihood of it ranking more highly. Then when we saw the lower funnel outcomes, a little more kind of tweaks and kind of specifics to how these findings washed out. First of all, that yes, having the branding in there is important, but we also found that for lower funnel, having it there, but not for more than 25% of the total duration increases that likelihood of it ranking more highly for purchase intent. And that adopting creatives with a hook increases performance, again, through both visual elements and sound. Thinking about how you grab attention right in that first couple of seconds to make people stop scrolling. And it was great just to have that data point around both visual and sound elements playing a crucial role in grabbing attention in that first couple of seconds for lower funnel. And a really cool and fun one as well for DR, that those native elements do really matter. We saw reels that used emojis as their native element makes the creatives 2.5 times more likely to rank highly for purchase intent. So lots of really granular and action insights there started to come out. And the great thing for DR advertisers, of course, is that by following that guidance, it can directly translate into improved ROAS.
Yeah, great hands-on guidance. And I think it also becomes clear, it kind of confirmed some of the hypotheses that we had, but short-form video reels on our platform, similar formats on other platforms, are differently consumed than others. It can have more of that user-generated content style. You can play around with emojis, but also sound is very important. So 10 years ago, when I started at Meta and everything was about feed, it was always educating advertisers around most users don't have sound on when they watch your ad. So make sure they are understood without sound. But for Reels, it's different. They have the sound on, so it opens new opportunities, but you also need to use them. So yeah, really good guidance.
Can I just add something to that?
Sure.
I was going to say a similar thing, that we've spent quite a long time educating advertisers around design for sound off. The way audiences do engage with short form video and reels and the like is quite different. So we do have a job to do now, a re-education job, if you like, on the sound on.
Yeah.
But some of those other principles, like branding early and often, have been around quite a long time in digital best practice, but it's still where we would frequently see good ads fall down. So the message still is that branding isn't an enemy of creative, right? Particularly in the digital space. Actually being upfront with who you are and why you're there really does encourage engagement and response. So whilst we've got some new guidelines, some of these are also good old traditional digital best practices that are worth remembering everyone of.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point. And now we have all these hands-on guidances that Dan also listened, and some of those that you mentioned. So can advertisers now simply follow this guidance and optimize brand equity and ROAS by simply following these points? What do you think?
Well, the intent really across the set of ads we tested was to try and identify the best elements that appear to work and have the strongest relationship to performance across a range of different brands in different markets. So it's a good start. I would caveat that it's not guaranteed that each and every element will work for each and every campaign. So we do encourage everyone to go on their own test and learn journey, but the results here should really be a starting point to really help fuel creativity, rather than giving absolutely detailed kind of recipes, if you like.
Sonja.
Oh, no, sorry, I was just saying, Martin just said it. We said already before, I think you need to find your own way. You need to pick what fits your brand and start testing what works best for your own campaigns. And you could use measurement that is available, for example, lift tests on Meta for this, or also similar approaches on other platforms. And by the way, talking about other platforms, we did this research with Reels. But the guidance is likely to work with other short form videos, such as YouTube Shorts or TikTok as well. So just test it.
Absolutely. And we have seen a lot of similarities between the findings from this research, supported by some other meta-learnings that we have on short form formats. So, for example, a study looking at a sort of broader selection of Reels, Shorts and TikTok videos came to some similar conclusions regarding making the brand a star, including scenes which offer a relatable slice of life and incorporating speech to drive impact. Another study we have looks specifically into hooks, in this case in TikTok videos, so those tactics that are employed at the beginning of these short form content formats. This also strongly supports what we've seen in the need to capture attention in the first 5 seconds. So very much something that's applicable across short form.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just really double down on that point. You were mentioning as well earlier, Martin, that really making sure you have that branding message landing early is absolutely crucial. And it's great to have that data point behind it, because whenever I'm asked to review a brand's creative, for example, hey, can you check out our reels? Can you tell us where we can perform better? The first thing I always look for is safe zones violations, because that's one of our long-standing pieces of advice to avoid that. It's where we've known for a long time, keep everything inside the safe zone. But beyond that, are you actually letting the audience know who you are within those first couple of seconds? And it's actually really a really common mistake that brands will leave it till the end, thinking that it's going to turn people off and cause them to swipe past. But really, if the content is strong and engaging, if there's a good hook, they'll keep watching anyway. And when you look at the playthrough curves of a reel, you'll see that the longer the reel is going on, of course, the fewer people are watching. People have volition and they can swipe past at any time. So just really making sure both the audio and the visual are communicating the brand and stating that case early is crucial. And then just that finding as well for lower funnel around branding and keeping it lighter touch, because we do see many brands, especially within CPG, where it is a bit easier to brand, where the logo is right on the front of the product often. It may be a brandorama where the entire duration of the video has logos and branding all over it. But we have seen that best practice emerge that we should cap it at 25% or less of the total duration of the creative. So really cool and actionable findings there. Exactly as Torsten says, these shouldn't be necessarily like a really strict recipe. As you were saying as well, Martin, this is just a jumping off point, an easy diagnosis point to build from.
And also the joy in the creativity that you can get through reels and other short form formats as well. Like we've mentioned emojis, but simple things like just opening the ad with someone talking directly to the camera, we've observed to be really effective. But there's a whole range of ways and creative tools you have on Meta and other to create that engagement and still follow the best practice, still make sure you're ticking these guidelines, but actually the way you go about it, I don't want to overstate it and say it's limitless, but there's many, many creative ways you can build in these best practices into your development process.
Yeah, that's great guidance. I mean, in the end, there is no recipe for creativity, but there are some ground rules, right? And then you can stand out with creativity. And all this guidance that we have here, it's really, you can be pretty sure that they work somehow, but test how good they work. And if for your particular brand, one works better than the other, so still test it, but be assured that in most cases, these points that have been mentioned work. So we have some great opportunities for advertisers across platforms actually utilizing these elements. But of course, also for testing them and finding the best individual combination for individual brands and products. So thinking a little bit about next steps of the future and looking at Toluna here a little bit, I've heard you have some new tools in store. What can you share?
Yes, well, I think most of your listeners will be familiar with the dramatic evolution that's being talked about in the market research industry at large at the moment, with the arrival of synthetic personas and AI approaches, and creative testing really is no exception there. So I do have something a little bit hot off the press today. In fact, what we've been doing in preparation for the conversation today, Torsten, is we retested all the ads that were part of this body of work that we had previously tested with real human respondents. We retested all of those ads with synthetic personas. And the results were really, really encouraging, actually. And I think it's important to say that there is a difference between synthetic persona and maybe a simple algorithm or AI. So synthetic personas specifically are built off of vast amounts of first-party data. And what we are asking our synthetic personas to do is really make judgments about the ads we're showing them in the same way that we ask human respondents to do. And synthetic personas really do see and hear ads in the way that humans do. And what we saw here was really strikingly similar results in terms of what ads rise to the top when tested amongst synthetic personas and human personas and real humans, and those that actually do quite poorly. What we've also observed through this exercise is that the very same creative variables and principles that we've discussed today that drive performance, as observed through a study with real humans, apply when we retest those ads through synthetic personas. And that's quite significant because that really is demonstrating where the industry at large has moved to in a very short space of time. So we're really in a place, or certainly on the threshold, of being able to deploy these large language informed synthetic personas to evaluate ads comparably to how real humans do, but they do it in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost. So when we're talking about test and learn programs and learning what works for your brand, it really is a very exciting and fantastic development in the industry to be able to do that faster and at much greater scale than we ever have been able to before. And it's really been wonderful to be able to demonstrate that with Meta on the ad testing that we've been doing here.
That sounds actually very exciting and also very important. I mean, of course, we've talked a lot about AI in this podcast. Of course, AI is the priority for Meta and many other companies right now. But if you use AI to do testing, I mean, in the end, it's human beings, it's consumers that buy your product or that get involved with your brand. So the AI needs to be able to simulate humans in a correct way. So that sounds very good, and definitely a call to action to utilize AI for very intense testing. It's also more efficient now. You can do it at big scale. And yeah, in the end, improve creatives to get the most impact. So thank you, everyone. I love all the great insights, all the inspiration. As always, I'd like everyone to share their key takeaways from this podcast. The few things that the audience should definitely remember from that. So let's start with Dan here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you heard from Sonja right at the start, over 50% of time spent on Instagram is Reels. We know they're absolutely here to stay. And by embracing these kind of findings and the specific codes of the format, advertisers really can unlock that full potential of Reels to drive meaningful engagement with their audiences. So you may be newer to Reels, you may be wanting to level up your current campaigns, but really getting curious about what these latest trends are, what are the tips, what's emerging, and getting hungry and excited and enthusiastic for how you can think about applying them and playing with them and building on them within your content production is really going to help you stand out on Reels.
Great. Thank you. Sonja, do you want to go next?
Yes, now more than ever. And actually, that sounds a bit dramatic and also feels a bit weird because I need to repeat myself again. But it's really important, now more than ever, that you build your own test and learn approach for Reels. And this should, as we discussed before, it should fit your unique campaigns, your products, your goals. It should be simply yours. And when you get into that mindset, trying things out, also making mistakes, and in the end, tweaking as you go, we are really convinced that it will help you to unlock the full potential of your creative ideas and then ultimately also your campaigns. So the last word, don't be afraid to experiment, whether that's with A/B testing, incrementality, or whatever works for you. This is, in the end, key to staying successful.
Thank you. And then handing over to Martin.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll speak on behalf of Bex and myself, if that's all right. I would probably build on both your points, actually, Dan and Sonja. Firstly, Dan, like, it is clear that for Reels and other short form videos, users expect content that feels real, relevant, and kind of in rhythm with how they're using the platform. And so that does mean that some new rules, like designing for sound and representing a real slice of life in your ad, like, they've emerged. And so advertisers do need to adjust some of what they've been hearing about traditional digital ad formats to fully optimize for Reels. And building on your point, Sonja, around test and learn and how critical that is, but reinforcing that the speed and scale of that testing is now infinitely greater with the arrival of synthetic personas, which to some people, it sounds scary, but they really do read, hear, and see ads in the way that real humans do. And it really is the future, I think, of this type of testing and test and learn programs.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely also very encouraging to see that the results match the real human results that we had in our study. So that's, I think, a test that should also be made from time to time. Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and sharing the great scaling approach that we leveraged here and your very hands-on guidance for advertising and creative agencies and builders. So thank you. Also, thanks to everyone listening. As always, of course, we hope it helped. We hope you liked it. If you did, please subscribe, like, and share. And see you next time. Goodbye.